At the turn of the century, a bartender took a challenge and created a drink so good it stole the spotlight from Broadway's biggest stars. More than 100 years later, it's still worth sipping on a summer afternoon. This is a story of the Florodora and the recipe that still knows how to put on a show. Welcome back to History in a Glass. I'm Josh, your guide in this tipsy time machine through history. Today, we set the time machine back to 1901. Yes, the same year we started in the last episode. While the Clover Club was stepping out of Philly, another legendary tale was being mixed up a few hundred miles north under Broadway's bright lights. This one had a hit musical, a chorus line turned media obsession, and a cocktail that's outlived the show it was named for. It was sweet, fizzy, and just scandalous enough to feel like Broadway in a glass. So, grab your ingredients and let's raise the curtain on the Florodora as it was first poured in 1901. The plot was forgettable. A fake island, a perfume factory, and enough mistaken identities to make Shakespeare roll his eyes. But the Florodora's real hook was its stars. The show debuted in London in 1899, and while audiences laughed at the silliness, they were captivated by the Florodora sextet. 6 identical brunettes, all exactly 5'4", in pink gowns and black pitcher hats, they became the show's calling card. They didn't headline the play, but they owned the audience. No scandals, no feuds, just a well-timed glimpse of the ankle, and suddenly, society's elites were fighting for the best seats in the house. The phenomenon crossed the Atlantic in 1900, and once it landed in Broadway, New York lost its mind. Gossip pages tracked their every dinner and carriage ride, and every original sextet member married a millionaire. They embodied the early 20th century fantasy of beauty, fame, and a ticket into high society, long before Hollywood took over that job. So why all this about these girls? Well, because without them, there's no Florodora cocktail, and no story of the night one of them challenged a bartender to invent something new. This cocktail's origin story comes straight from a 1901 New York Evening World article. One night after the show, the Florodora cast was out at a Columbus Avenue restaurant when Susie Drake, one of the sextettes, announced that she'd only drink lemonade. And this annoyed the rest of their guests. This was Broadway after all, not a church picnic. She smirked and said, "If you get me something brand new, I'll drink it." So behind the bar was Jimmy O'Brien, a man with a reputation for quick thinking and better cocktails. He took the challenge. The paper joked that the sound of him thinking nearly drowned out the sound of the electric bands. He grabbed raspberry syrup, squeezed a whole lime, added just enough of Plymouth Gin to catch the taste, and topped it all with the best ginger ale he had, all over crushed ice. The Evening World promised it would transport you to Elysium, and just like that, the Florodora was born. It wasn't just a drink, it was theater in a glass. From there, it spread through New York's highbrow bars, but the recipe didn't stay put. Jacques Straub's manual of mixed drinks turned it into the Florodora cooler, later on the gin and lime, drowned in Schweppes ginger ale, likely thanks to a little product placement, and a year later came the imperial style, with cognac instead of gin. By 1933, Jack Grohusko's Jack manual was calling it the Florodora with an A in the middle, not an O, and that was a typo that would pop up for years before the drink's real name found its way back into menus. We're going straight to the source for this one, the Evening World's 1901 recipe. This is brought back to life with the help of David Wondrich, who's done the hard work of pinning down the measurements that they never bothered to print. This is the Florodora as it would have landed in front of Susie Drake that night. Sharp, refreshing, and built to turn a lemonade drinker into a gin convert. Let's take a look at what we need for the recipe, starting off with the booze. To start, we need 1.5 ounces of Plymouth Gin. So I am using, well, Plymouth Gin. This is the same brand that you could have ordered in New York in 1901, giving us the closest possible taste to what Susie Drake had in her glass that night. Next, we need 2 teaspoons of raspberry syrup, and here I made my own. Partly for freshness, but partly because I like to think that Jimmy O'Brien didn't have to squeeze his out of a bottle either. We'll need juice of a whole lime, and then we're gonna need some ginger ale to top off the glass. And then to garnish, we'll use an orange slice and some pitted cherries. So let's go ahead and build our 1901 Florodora. At the turn of the century, chorus girls were basically influencers before Instagram. They didn't just sell tickets, they sold fashion, slang, and whole lifestyles. If a cocktail got tied to that scene, instant buzz. Most gin drinks of that era leaned sharp and bracing. The Florodora went the other way. raspberry, ginger, and fizz. Sweet enough to charm, spicy enough to surprise. It's a rare case where men and women actually ordered the same thing. And now it's time for the ginger ale. And back in 1901, ginger ale wasn't like the sweet ginger ale that we have today. It was a little bit more full-bodied and spicier. So what I'm actually going to do here is do 2 parts ginger ale and 1 part ginger beer to try to get that historical flavor here. Around 1900, a Broadway bar wasn't just where you went to have a drink. It was a stage in itself. Having a Broadway cocktail meant your drink wasn't just local, it was part of the cultural spotlight. Gossip, glamour, and all. The musical faded, but its shadow hung around pop culture. A 1930 movie cast Marion Davies as a Florodora girl, and even Sinatra cracked wise about wanting to see a Florodora girl. Not bad for a silly little play and its cocktail. There's no specification whether or not we should use a straw, but I'm going to use one. And now we are ready to taste our 1901 Florodora. Let's go ahead and give it a try. Cheers. Okay, so yeah, this is refreshing, but it's not mild. It's a little sweet, a little tangy. You definitely get some of that ginger spice in here. You get the raspberry. For me, I mostly taste the citrus and the ginger right up front. Do get a little bit of sweetness from that raspberry syrup, but this is totally an easy summer sipper. This is the kind of drink that sneaks up on you, just like the Florodora girls did on Every Millionaire in New York. Now, if you order a Florodora today, odds are you're not getting a 1901 recipe in your glass. Modern recipes split it into a couple of camps. One goes for raspberry liqueur with ginger ale, boozier, sweeter, and usually shaken before the top up. Another swaps in raspberry syrup with ginger beer and a heavier pour of gin, sometimes served tall for more bite. And then there's the fresh fruit crowd, muddling raspberries with simple syrup and ginger syrup for something brighter and less candy sweet than the original. Same name, completely different personality. Today's Florodora is louder, stronger, and spicier than the one that Susie Drake talked Jimmy O'Brien into making. The curtain dropped on the Florodora more than a century ago, but the cocktail it inspired still pops up now and then. A fizzy time capsule from the night a chorus girl challenged a bartender to be brilliant. It's light, playful, and just a little theatrical. The kind of drink that reminds you how easily a moment can slip from tabloid gossip to forgotten history. Reviving it isn't just about taste. It's about pouring yourself back into a time when a celebrity was measured by the inches of their ankle, and a good bartender could make headlines with a splash of gin and a dare. Thanks for keeping history alive with me, one sip at a time. Until next time, drink responsibly, or at least drink historically.